Hi, this is Brent the Climate Guru, and we're going to talk today about one of nature's great miracles, the monarch butterfly, recognizable with its black and orange colorings. We've seen them. They're in many parts of the United States and Canada. The monarch butterfly flies up to 3,000 miles every season from the Great Lakes area of the United States or Canada into the mountains of Mexico, in the state of Michoacan and the state of Mexico, where they spend the winter in a biosphere reserve. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is proposing to protect the monarch butterfly by placing on the protected species list, and they want the help of the public to help preserve it. There are two groups of monarchs principally. One of them is in the east of the Mississippi, and the other one is west of the Mississippi, and they both have distinct migration patterns. The ones that are west of the Mississippi migrate to several areas that they've gone for thousands of years along the coastal areas of central and southern California. Those that are east of the Mississippi, that originate in the Great Lakes area of the U.S., Canada, north central area of the United States, they migrate all the way to Mexico and can fly as far as 3,000 miles. How do they do it? They use thermals and air currents to travel these long distances. They often warm up on sunny days and find water to drink. When they get to Mexico, they cluster in the trees, in the forests of the mountains of Michoacan, and you will have up to 80 million butterflies today that spend the winter in the mountains of Mexico. The migrating monarchs that migrate south from northern United States and Canada to Mexico live up to 9 months, and other monarchs only live 3 to 4 weeks. They spent the 9 months migrating south and then stick out the whole winter in Mexico, the same butterfly, waiting until the spring, and then they begin a return trip north to the original breeding grounds in northern United States or in Canada. The return trip is not by one butterfly. It's several generations that are born in Texas after they migrate from the mountains of Mexico. They might come into Texas, and there they lay eggs, caterpillars, and there could be another 3 generations of butterflies that migrate north from Mexico to Canada. The ones that migrate south, we mentioned, is one generation. One butterfly that migrates from Canada or northern United States to Mexico, spends the entire winter in Mexico, then in the spring in Mexico begins to return north and makes it to the United States and begins to lay eggs. And there's another 3 generations that to make it back. Now, when they come back to the United States and Texas and other states, they need certain flowers in order to continue the generations. They need wildflowers to eat the nectar, to gain weight. And they also need plants to lay their eggs on. And the milkweed is the plant that they require. A milkweed, which is a wild plant that grows in much of the United States, including in Texas, is where the butterflies will go to lay eggs. And they will hatch into caterpillars, and the caterpillars enclose themselves in a certain cocoon, and then they metamorphose into black and orange adult butterflies. They may only live 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks, but they lay eggs, they continue to migrate north, and as they lay eggs, there are more butterflies at another generation. So it might take 3 or 4 generations to reach the northern United States and Canada on their northern route. Southern route, it's one butterfly that can fly 3,000 miles, spend the entire winter in Mexico in these colonies in the biosphere reserve, and then return in the spring. The western migration doesn't go to Mexico, but spends the winter in coastal areas of central and southern California. There are threats to the monarch butterfly of both populations. They have declined. One of the threats is in Mexico, the biosphere reserve, which is a forest, has had certain deforestation. So there's less areas where they can colonize and spend the winter. Another big issue is the lack of sufficient milkweed, the wild plants that they lay eggs on and have a second generation, a cocoon, which a butterfly is born from. So there's milkweed declining and herbicides, which kill the natural habitat and these natural areas where the milkweed can grow. It could be on the side of roads. It could be in between different crops that are grown in different parts of the United States. And also insecticides will affect the butterfly and can kill them in large numbers if that's what's used in agriculture. The temperatures in the United States and in Canada will also affect the prevalence of milkweed. If it's too hot or it's too cold from climate change, that can affect the prevalence of milkweed. The rainfall patterns from climate change, abnormal patterns of drought or of rain, of flooding, can also cause a decline in the specific wildflowers that they need in order to survive. And monarch butterfly are natural pollinators, and we need pollinators for 75% of the human food grown as crops. They are pollinators like birds, bats, and other insects. The monarchs, when they consume the nectar from the wildflower, they actually store fat in their abdomen, which is critical for their flight south and also spending the entire winter on the trees in the forests of Mexico. When they get to Mexico, there may be 37 million monarch butterflies in each hectare. A hectare is 2.4 acres. Now there's about 2 hectares in Mexico, and there are about 80 million monarch butterflies in total that overwinter in Mexico and then return in the spring. We have pesticide, insecticides, climate change, which can affect the butterflies, and also decline of habitat. They need resting places for overwintering, whether it's in the central United States, the Great Plains as they migrate south into Texas, and also in California. As habitat is destroyed, they lack that in order to spend the winter in coastal areas of the United States. The Fish and Wildlife Service has proposed more than 4,000 acres in the western migration that go into California. They're trying to preserve areas in Alameda County, Marin, Monterey, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, and Ventura counties. So preserving their habitat so they can overwinter in the coastal areas of California are also critical. So they are one of the great miracles. How does the different generations of butterflies find out where they return? The generation that is born in the northern states or Canada, that is the one that makes the flight all the way south. They find the same tree in the same forest, maybe the same branch where their ancestors overwintered. On the way back, 2 or 3 generations of butterflies go back often to the same area of Great Lakes or of Canada where their ancestors spent the summers. It's a miracle that science can really not explain. The president of Association of Zoos and Aquariums, Don Ash, said, "The monarch butterflies epitomize simple beauty, grace, strength, and determination. They're one of the most beloved and recognizable ambassadors for biodiversity. With their extraordinary long-distance migration and widespread cultural significance, they represent the hope, resilience, and interconnectedness of humans and all of nature." So what can we as individuals do to help the monarch butterfly survive, whether it's in the eastern migration that comes from the Great Lakes down through the central United States, Texas, into Mexico, or the western migration that starts in the Northwest, Canada, and migrates basically into California? But one of the things that we can do is plant wildflowers and be aware of which wildflowers the monarch butterfly relies upon. It could be a very small patch of wildflowers in your garden, along your house, in your yard. It doesn't take much. They find them. Another critical issue is, of course, milkweed. And if you can plant milkweed in your yard from seeds or from small plants that you can buy from different providers, different suppliers, Milkweed are essential for the monarchs. That's the only place that the monarchs will lay eggs, where the caterpillars are born. The caterpillars eat the leaves of these milkweeds, and because they have a certain poison in them, they are resistant. There's a certain resistance, protection that the caterpillars have from predators. I'm sitting in Florida at the moment, and I'm observing 2 monarch butterflies right here in the yard. I've been watching them the last few days. There are populations in Florida and other states that don't overwinter in Mexico. Aren't they beautiful?